It's episode 16 of the Average Joe Sports Show. Chris Schmidt, Nebraska, are they going to fear the turtle?
Mitch Sherman, we're going to talk turnovers, and I've got some numbers that you want to hear.
Hi, it's Bill Doleman. Can Heinrich Haarberg feel comfortable and play well at home?
It's Elijah Herbel here. We'll wrap this one by making our picks for the weekend slate of college football, and stick around for Elijah Herbel's lock of the season.
Welcome to it, episode 16 of the Average Joe Sports Show. Chris Schmidt, Mitch Sherman, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, and you can find the show on YouTube, the Average Joe Sports Show. Subscribe there and on Twitter, the AJ Sports Pod. Mitch, what's up? Are you hunkered down in the Mitch Sherman office away from home, or are you situated all right?
I'm in the man cave here. I'm sitting at the basement bar. I got Nebraska basketball in front of me. I got Thursday night football behind me, so there's not a place in the world I'd rather be than right here, other than in studio with you guys.
Well, I don't know about being in studio, though, because when we do it in studio, which is great, Schmidt often looks like he's in the witness protection program, or they're interviewing him one of those shows where they don't want the person he doesn't want to be identified, because he's got that window behind him, and then just this silhouette that we see with that altered voice that's his actual voice. So here now, we're on the home show, and we can see you in your living room. I'm not sure which one is better, but I'm just noticing that we're seeing your bright, smiley, shiny face there.
We need to start playing Where in the World is Schmitty, because last week we had him in, like, he was trapped in an elevator, and then he was in a hotel room where there were bats hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah, right.
So I mean, Schmitty, where are you going to be next week? I mean, are you traveling up to Wisconsin before the 48 hours before the kickoff as usual?
I don't think so. Being the thrifty person I am, going a day early has saved a few $100s. I think I'm permanently banned from the Nebraska road trips because for Ireland, and aside from Iowa City last year, it had been since the Notre Dame win in South Bend to Iowa City.
Whoa, you are going way back, my man.
But that's the last time Nebraska won on the road that I went.
It should be noted, Schmitty, did you not drive to Iowa City?
I did.
And you flew to Dublin, you flew to Boulder, you flew to Michigan. I don't think it's the problem that you're there. I think it's your method of transportation, which brings me back. Road trip to Madison in the Impala, sure to go well.
Yeah. Flew to Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
I did drive to Minnesota with Doleman in 2021. Didn't go well. We drove to Oklahoma in Cousin Eddie's RV. Uncle Andy had the most beautiful RV on the interior. It looked like Heisenberg's meth boutique.
You were camped out with Doc Sadler in the parking lot at Lloyd Noble, right?
Yeah, we were, and it was good. That was this road trip was great, except for the ball game. If you're a Nebraska fan, so I am a hard no on Madison right now.
I'm still holding out hope that we're going to road trip to USC next year. That's my dream, and I'm going to get a bunch of content out of it, and we're going to stop in the mountains, and we're going to go to Utah and Vegas and everything. So it's a long ways away, but a man can dream. And then when it comes time to book a flight, I'll do that.
Let's do it. We'll drive there. Mitch will fly home.
There you go.
I know we have plenty of Maryland to talk this week, but have you ever been to Madison? I assume, Mitch, you've been to Madison. Madison's a beautiful town.
Yeah, it's a nice place.
It is nice.
I highly recommend Madison.
I'm thinking about hanging in Chicago on Friday night next week, because I didn't really get Chicago time when the Huskers played at Illinois this year. I flew in day of the game and was in the Windy City for just a couple of hours before I went down to Champaign. So with the night kickoff in Madison next week, I get in midday on Friday, and I may do some exploring in the city, and then head up to Madtown Saturday early in the day. But I will say this: I've been there many times, and playing a night game at Camp Randall in November is not my idea of anything that I ever imagined I would enjoy. The long-term forecast, it looks okay, but that is the coldest press box in America. They don't heat like the bottom half of the press box. And by the bottom half, I mean like under the seats, under the table. I covered an Iowa-Wisconsin game there one year, and I left, and my feet were like a block of ice. I mean, that's the only way I can describe what they were. So I'm going to go with like 3 pairs of socks if needed, and like boots and, whatever else I could possibly get on my legs, so that I'm able to actually walk down the stairs when the fourth quarter is over.
Well, with some of our luck, though, you're probably going to show up with the 3 pairs of socks on and the boots and the winter coat and the stocking cap, and they're going to have fixed the heating since last time you were there, and it's going to be a beautiful 75.
That's pre-scouting. Come on now.
Yeah, no kidding. How about that, Dud? We'll get to Nebraska, Maryland, but kind of been waiting on Harbaugh news all day, and it's still review time of the 10-page response letter.
Yeah, we have to be careful because, we're taping this at about 7:30 Central Time on Thursday night, and Tony Petitti might drop his bomb on Harbaugh around 11 o'clock or midnight tonight. I mean, I have no inside knowledge of that, but this seems like the kind of thing where they might want to wait and do it at a time when everybody's not ready to respond. So who knows? I mean, I feel like this thing's going to be kind of a letdown when it happens now. And, Petitti didn't travel to the Power 5 commissioners' CFP meetings in Texas this week because he apparently needed to stay back in Chicago and cheer on Big Ten soccer teams in the NCAA tournament or make up a punishment for Jim Harbaugh, whichever one of those two things is at the top of his priority list. But I feel like Michigan's going to walk into Penn State this weekend still not knowing exactly what's going on with its coach.
Well, how funny would that be if it was an 11:01 news drop on Saturday morning right after kickoff between Michigan and Penn State? No one's got time to respond. It's going to be the talk of the whole broadcast. That'd be funny. I'd be all for that.
What do you drop it at the beginning of Big Noon?
What he needs to do is, Tony Petitti, is go to the Rob Manfred School of Commissioner Punishments and then do the exact opposite. Because, Manfred has been a master at botching punishments for those who do ill in their leagues. But look, if you suspend Harbaugh, and I don't want to diminish the position of head coach, okay? But if all you do is suspend Jim Harbaugh, is that really enacting significant punishment? Shouldn't you perhaps also, because look, we've seen the videos. There are a lot of other coaches who were kind of complicit and knew exactly who Connor Stalions was to them. Shouldn't this be a situation where Lance Harbor and Jonathan Moxon take over the team and they kick Bud Kilmer away and the players have to coach the games or something like that, like they did it worked out in Varsity Blues, but Wes Canaan was able to overcome losing a head coach. But look, they played 3 games already this season without, Jim Harbaugh. You've got your coordinators, your full staffs, 50 people involved. Is that going to be that big of a deal if they say, well, Jim Harbaugh can't coach against Ohio State?
He's already missed 3 games this year, and they did just fine in those.
Right, that's my point is, what's the punishment?
The schedule gets a little tougher as Michigan goes forward from here. I think losing Harbaugh would be more of a psychological battering ram to the Wolverines than the actual impact on the game.
But they've already done that.
Right. Michigan State went down the road of bringing back a former coach to help coach things, with Mark D'Antonio stepping back on the sidelines this year. Maybe Michigan could get Brady Hoke or Rich Rodriguez, the glory days in Ann Arbor, and bring those guys back.
Lloyd Carr, he's still around, isn't he?
Yeah, I believe so.
Just get the Gary
Moll. Actually, not sure if he is, but yeah.
Is Gary Moeller still with us? And is there an open bar?
Maybe this is Les Miles' shot.
Finally.
It's his chance to go to Michigan, yeah.
Finally, a Michigan man will lead Michigan. Les Miles finally gets his shot to coach the Wolverines for Kirk Herbstreit.
Best thing I saw on Twitter, and we'll move off of Michigan and awaiting spanking, was on Twitter where the punishment is this: you have to take on Brian Ferentz as your new offensive coordinator,
Yes.
and take on Alex Grinch as your defensive coordinator.
That would be a challenge. The challenge of all challenges. Could Michigan beat Ohio State with those coordinators? Lloyd Carr is still around. He's 78 and living in Tennessee, according to Wikipedia.
Good work.
All right.
Good work. But to go back to Ferentz and Grinch, something tells me if any team in America could rise above those circumstances, it'd be Michigan. Because I was saying this to Schmidt a little bit earlier this week on Hail Varsity Radio, and that's that Michigan's got a chance, in my opinion, where they stand right now, how they perform through their first 9 games. This could be a team that, if they do in fact run the table, could be in the conversation for one of the better college football teams of all time. With their margin of victory right now in all of their games, I know the meat of their schedule, the difficult teams.
Schedule screws.
Let's see them play somebody first.
Yeah, that's the problem.
If all time means 20, if all time means 2023 and maybe 22, okay, not all time.
Talk to me after they play Penn State on the road.
They have been dominant in every single game, and I understand they still have the meat of their schedule, but what they've done, you can only do what you have on your schedule. You can only go forth and take on those challenges, and through 9 games, they have performed up to that standard. How does it look against Penn State? How does it look against Ohio State? How does it look in a potential playoff? That still remains to be seen, but if they can keep this up, I still think that this team has a chance, in terms of controlling its own destiny, to go down as one of the better college football teams of all time. Now, that's still a long ways away. But
all stolen signs do not point toward that being true.
2019 LSU would hang 60 on these guys.
Oh, I don't believe that. I think 2019 LSU would hang at least 30 on them.
I think LSU would hang 60 in the first half. And
No
at least
way.
Manny Diaz has a sense of humor and letting Michigan already know what's going to happen with the sign. That means get loud on third down.
James
Manny
Franklin
Diaz.
said the Nittany Lions have 700 defensive signals. So good luck deciphering those.
That's what's going to happen. It's the Average Joe Sports Show, episode 16. That's Mitch Sherman, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. And find us on YouTube. Subscribe the AJ Sports Show. Twitter, the AJ Sports Pod. It is the race for 6 between Nebraska and Maryland. Maryland, September looked glorious until they got to October, and they are still waiting on that 6th win to get bowl eligible. Nebraska, a really nice October, but a tough misstep, Mitch, in East Lansing. We touched on that earlier in the week with the pod, but now probably A or A1, the best quarterback Nebraska is going to see in a high-wire offense. The black shirts got to respond.
Yeah, Talia Tagovailoa coming into Memorial Stadium, and Matt Rule said he wished that there would be snow and ice to greet him in the Terps offensive arsenal. And they really do have a good cast of offensive skill players. You know, while Nebraska had a pretty decent cast of offensive skill players, and then they all got hurt through the first 6 or 7 games of the year, Maryland has kept its group intact and is the 4th best statistically offense in the Big Ten, behind the 3 teams that have separated themselves in every way from the other 3. So it's a formidable task. This isn't the kind of team that you slow down and hold in the teens or to 300 yards. They're going to have to handle Maryland's tempo. Maryland's going to want to come out and push the boundaries of the field, try to throw over the top of that Nebraska secondary. You know, I don't know if they're going to be able to run it against the black shirts, and if there's an advantage that Nebraska has with its defense, it's to try to heat up Tagovailoa, get him on the run, get him scared, as some of the Nebraska defensive players said on Tuesday when they talked to the media, and then see if Maryland gets frustrated, because after 4 consecutive defeats, you know, I think there are some concerns about Maryland's mental whereabouts, and you know, you're not facing a hot team coming in here, so maybe Nebraska can get momentum without having to work extremely hard to get there.
I think it's difficult for Maryland, and a little bit like it's difficult for Nebraska to get up for those unknown Big Ten opponents. This is the 3rd time all time that they played, and Maryland hasn't played in Lincoln. Is that right? Both the other teams weren't they in Maryland?
2016.
Yeah, the last one, 2016 in Lincoln. Yeah.
Okay, well, but it's a forgettable series. So, when Nebraska travels to Rutgers or to Maryland, or it's just this is a conference rival now. Is that right? When did this happen, right? And I think for Maryland, because it has been such a long time since they've been here, this is kind of an unknown atmosphere. This is a whole different trip. There's going to be a pretty good crowd there, I believe, that still believes that this team's going to go bowling. I think that there's going to be an adjustment period for them, just this trip alone. Plus, they're losing a couple of hours. There's an intangible there that just seems that doesn't play into their hands, if you ask me.
But if we're talking just the X's and O's on the field, and I'm with you, Bill, in terms of the intangibles is advantage Nebraska. But I look at the X's and O's, how Maryland likes to play, how Nebraska plays, and it feels like advantage Maryland because of. Whenever you look at the Nebraska defense, they've been great against the run. That's not what Maryland wants to come do to you. They want to get you big chunk plays through the air, and that's where Nebraska's defense has seemed somewhat susceptible. And you worry about that if Maryland can go put up 24 points, how is the Husker offense going to come anywhere close to 24 points if it's not on the backs of the defense with turnovers and setting up the offense with short fields or maybe a couple big special teams plays? It feels like from an X's and O's standpoint, it's advantage Maryland because of how they move the ball offensively. It seems to be the foil to Nebraska's defense. And then Nebraska's offense hasn't been able to generate a rhythm really even in the month of October whenever they got 3 wins. That still wasn't an offense that felt in rhythm, and it feels like Nebraska's offense is going to need to get some rhythm against this Maryland defense, and I'm not sure I foresee that happening because of just the limitations Nebraska's offense has with all the injuries and the backups essentially that are playing. And I understand they're not backups anymore, but where they started the year, these weren't guys that you were expected to rely upon, and now you got to rely upon them in the month of November.
I want to talk about turnovers in a minute here, but I think that's going to be a huge part of this game. Nebraska was -3 against Michigan State. It was -3 against Colorado and Minnesota in those losses, and then was on the negative in the turnovers in each one of those games that Nebraska won in the month of October. I don't think that flies against Maryland. You can maybe survive being -1 or even, but the far preferred place for Nebraska to be, and it's only been in this situation one time this year, and that was against Louisiana Tech, is in the black, in the positive in that turnover category. And Maryland is the kind of team that I think if you turn them over, if they can get a pick, if they can force a fumble, if they can do something to get momentum in this game, that's when you really impact their tempo. And it's harder for Maryland to come out and want to push the pace because they don't want to get in a spot if they've turned the ball over where all of a sudden they go 3 and out in a 29-second possession, and you give that ball back to Nebraska and you just build momentum for the black shirts. So turnovers to me, I would also look at special teams and what Nebraska can do in its punt returns, but turnovers to me are a giant factor in this game. And in fact, I wrote about that for The Athletic on Thursday, and we'll throw some crazy numbers at you guys here in a minute. But that's a key, not just in this game, but I think against Wisconsin and What also.
Well, Mike Loxley said it.
Who's giving Mitch the thumbs downs here?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure where that's coming from. But Mike Loxley. What was that, Schmitty?
I was not touching my computer based on how well it went to get things kicked off here.
But Schmitty, really fast, I just want to jump in and say Mike Loxley said it at his presser this week. Maryland, what you need to do to win football games, I think Nebraska needs to do the same, is you need to win the turnover battle and you need to win the explosive play battle. If you lose both of those, you're going to lose the football game. Nebraska lost both of those battles against Michigan State. They lose the football game. I don't see them winning the explosive play battle against Maryland, which makes me think you have to win the turnover battle or else you're going to lose this football game. And from what that offense has put together in the past 4 or 5 weeks or so, I'm not confident that Nebraska can go out and go win that turnover battle, especially convincingly, if at all.
There's no evidence that says they can.
Here's the thing that bothers me for Nebraska, and it's going to be 3rd and long. Okay, 3rd and long. A lot of the season, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 12, teams have been able to complete some passes. Now, Nebraska will stiffen and it's field goals, or they've kept them out of the end zone. And there's been a lot of drives, the Louisiana Techs of the world, Colorado for certain. But 3rd down and long has not been great for the Nebraska defense. More times than not, that's been an issue for them getting off the field. And then when it comes to pass rush, is Nebraska going to have to send the kitchen sink every single time to get home? At worst, can they get home with 5 if they bring an extra guy? Or is this the ball game that Nebraska is able to get home with 4? Prince Will's super key to getting after the quarterback, or at least helping free other guys.
I don't think he's going to play.
Yeah, he's a question mark because he's in protocol. Yeah. So those are the things with me. 3rd and long and in the pass rush. Can Nebraska just really rattle a guy that's got 43 career starts and is super mobile?
Well, watch Cam Lenhart. He made a return, I think, in a big way. I thought he played well at Michigan State. And then the other guy to watch is James Williams, I think, coming off the edge. He just seems to continue to get better each time he's out there and more comfortable, and they've started to put him in more packages. And it's bizarre to say that he's a key player when you consider where he was a month ago. But coming around those offensive tackles, he looks legit when maybe it's just that he's fresh and hasn't played much this year, but I mean, this was an afterthought walk-on out of junior college playing the scout team, and he's coming around the edge looking like one of the Bosa brothers. I mean, that's maybe a little bit overdone, but there was one play I noticed him at Michigan State, and he got to the QB and had a sack, and like that guy's got some real athleticism in what he does as a pass rusher. So I think you're going to see him, because Maryland likes to drop back and throw it so much. I think you're going to see he'll have a larger role. And
we talked about it a couple weeks ago with James Williams. He's got all the athletic potential in the world. It was turning him into a football player, and that's why I think you see him get better and better every single week. Like that dip that he has around the edge you talked about in that play against Michigan State, if you go back and watch that play, that's NFL level dip to get around that edge and get to the quarterback. Like the guy it reminded me of legitimately was Chase Young whenever he was at Ohio State. And I know James Williams hasn't filled out to that point yet. He's a long way from being anything like Chase Young, but in that one play, you saw him get upfield, dip the shoulder, get low around the edge, and I went, wow, that's a guy that from the height standpoint and how low he can dip reminded me of Chase Young. And I'm not calling James Williams Chase Young.
I think he's like Lawrence Taylor.
Do we go Von Miller next, huh? What other high-level passers do we want?
He really reminds me a lot of Micah Parsons. I see some of that there.
But he is long and lean, though, and he is quick, and he does look fresh, and he's got a reach. I don't know what his wingspan is, but when he gets out there and he's got an opportunity to grab a hold of a jersey, he was kind of fun to watch when you see 90 out there, and it's like the eyes go to him to see what he might do, and it's really impressive the way he's come on. It reminds me of a different player, but it reminds me a little bit of the Jared Tomich story. Tomich is this, working in the steel mills of, St. John, Indiana, and the only reason he ends up at Nebraska is because the strength coach Dick Peterson at his high school tells Charlie McBride, "I got a kid who's a really hard worker. He's pretty tough, and if he doesn't go walk on at Nebraska, he's going to either go to a junior college and walk on, or go work in the steel mills in Gary. So why don't you give him a look?"
Right,
now he was much more of a middle linebacker looking end as opposed to a guy who is much leaner. But the story of kind of an out of nowhere impact player, he's still got a ways to go to have the kind of impact that Jared did. But from humble beginnings, he's having quite a story right now for Nebraska.
And the question with Williams moving forward, he's already played in 3. There's 3 games left. 2 of those teams you think are going to throw the football. Does Matt Rule still want to keep the red shirt on James Williams? They need him down the stretch. I think the Prince Will health factor is going to factor in there, but something tells me he may have played his way out of a red shirt year. I mean, he had 4 years to play 3. I think that might become 3 years to play 3 with what he's showing us this year.
I think it's possible, yeah. I mean, if he can contribute and play 15, 20 snaps a game and even more as they get closer to the end of the season, although Iowa's only going to throw it 12 times, so you probably don't need him in that game. And I don't think the bowl games are going to count toward redshirt availability. That's a rule a year-by-year rule that the NCAA states. And a year ago in 22 in the bowl season, because there was so much transfer portal activity with players going into the portal before bowl games, they issued a waiver that said that any player who played in a bowl game, it wouldn't count against their 4-game red shirt. And I'd expect that that's going to be something that comes out this year too, but that ruling didn't happen until mid-December. So Nebraska hopes that it's in that position to be able to have to worry about that. And, we'll find out maybe on Saturday. But Bill, since you brought up Jared Tomich, I want to go down this road, and I have a question for you. and this relates to everything that's going on with Nebraska's turnover situation right now, because they are minus 12 this year, and they've lost 22 turnovers, which is the worst in the country, 131st out of 133 nationally in turnover margin. This year it seems set, unless something wild happens in the last 3 games, seems set to be the, it would be the 17th time, the 17th time in the last 20 seasons that Nebraska has been minus in the turnover category. Right now, since 2004, year one under Bill Callahan, Nebraska is minus 111 in turnover margin. 362 gained, 473 taken away. I went and added all of this up today, year by year, with where they rank and just how bad they are. So I bring this up because I also went and looked at the 20 years before that, not just 04 to 23, but I looked at 84 to 2003. And I want to ask you, saying that Nebraska is minus 111, which is far and away the worst in the Power 5 over the last 20 years. From 84 to 03, I would like you guys to just guess what you think their turnover margin was in those 20 seasons, taking into account Nebraska was the second most winning team in the country behind Miami in that stretch. Minus 111 in this 20. What were they in the previous 20?
Now, these are all turnovers, interceptions and fumbles.
Turnover margin. So
Turnover
you're talking,
margin.
you're talking, minus 111 in the last 20. What
Now,
were they
see,
in the
I
previous?
would think that would be considerably lower, that there would be much fewer turnovers, because in that 20-year period, Nebraska was throwing the ball maybe 15 times per game, so the chances for interceptions was much lower. And the only reason I can recall that is because I did some analytics work for T.O. back in the day when he was wanting to prove how efficient his passing game was in the Big 8. So,
Well, they were on the plus side. I'll give you that. They're
Yeah.
on the plus side. They're from 84 to 03. They're definitely on the plus side. Where do you got them?
I would think that Nebraska was probably a plus, I would say plus 60.
Plus 130.
Wow.
130. As bad as Nebraska's been with the turnovers in these 20 years, the last 20 years, they were even better on the other side in the previous 20. Tons of interceptions every year, way outgained their opponents with picks every single year, and the fumbles were generally pretty even. But Nebraska didn't throw many interceptions because, as you said, they weren't throwing the ball, period. So 100 and plus 130, and I got to think that was the best nationally over those 20 years.
So
only 2 years out of those 20 was Nebraska negative in turnover margin.
And I just did some quick math. That means Nebraska was on average plus 7 per year.
Plus 6.5. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
99.
Yeah.
The 99 team led the nation in fumbles with 49. I think they lost.
It still finished plus 5. Still finished plus 5 in turnover margin that year.
That's incredible because they lost 25 fumbles that year with Vanden Bosch and company.
It is amazing too when you consider all the opportunities to carry the football. As I was indicating, Nebraska didn't throw the ball much back then, averaging maybe 15 pass attempts per game during that stretch, late Big 8 and early Big 12. But to think of the number of carries during that stretch, when Nebraska would have 60 rushing attempts or more in a game, and not just first line guys. Nebraska was beating teams by a lot. So you had second, third, fourth team running backs in games and playing the option where you've got the ball pitched. That's a staggering amount when you really, really think about it. It's like, wow, that's a big number, Mitch. And then you start to think about it. The number of carries per game and the opportunities to fumble the ball by a running back or a quarterback, and when you average 60 carries per, that's mind-boggling, actually.
It just shows you how dominant Nebraska was really in every phase of the game. The 03 team, which was when this thing turned on a dime, and that was Bo Pelini's defense that in the last year of Frank Solich. The 03 team was plus 23 in the turnover category. They created 47 turnovers, that defense did. No defense since then in the last 20 years has gotten over 44. So in the last 21 years, you have Bo Pelini's 2003 defense at 47, and actually Washington State that year created 48 turnovers. but Nebraska led the country at plus 23 in the margin. And then since then, it's been straight downhill.
Wow. That's stunning. Good on you, Nick.
And it's perplexing because it's across multiple
Five
staffs.
coaches.
Yeah, multiple staffs, a whole litany of different players, different conferences. It's curse? Is it a curse?
No, it's practicing.
And you come to expect it, though. That's the thing. You come to expect a 3 fumbles a game now. Like, oh, there it is. Yeah. A botched kickoff return for a fumble. The other team's going to – you're just like, okay, well, that's the check. What's next? Fumbled snap on a 3rd down and 5. Okay, check. And then a late game fumble fighting for yards when you've got the ball in the red zone. Check. Oh, and let's throw an interception or 2 while we're at it. And people are just that's what we expected this week.
You talk about all the hurdles that Matt Rule and his program have to clear, and that's one that they've yet to accomplish or to really even approach. To me, that's as big as anything. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff behind the scenes with culture and attitude, and I get it. That's really important. But on the field, and as far as how this team plays, they've got to find a way to kick this habit. It's year after year after year, -12, -3, -5, -11, -2, -7, -12, -2. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. That's their margin each year. So when they start going plus year after year, do it 2 years in a row. They haven't done it 2 years in a row since 2001. So when they can do that again, then you can say, all right, that's one wall knocked down on the road to being a competitive program again.
It's Mitch Sherman, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, The Average Joe Sports Show, episode 16. Can find us and subscribe on YouTube, The AJ Sports Show, the Twitter handle, The AJ Sports Pod. So turnovers, the black shirts, we get to Mr. Haarberg. A lot of talk about clearing his mind, freeing himself, running through people, all that good stuff. And you want to see an earlier version of Haarberg. And if that can happen Saturday and the rest of November, that's going to lead to more explosive plays. That's going to lead to more ground and pound opportunity with that option game that looked good early when they adapted to it. And right now, he's a guy that wants it so bad and wants to be the guy, but he's been getting in his own way, and to give him a little bit of grace, there's not always been enough help, specifically with the offensive line. It's got to be better, fellas, when we look at Saturday.
What he can't get into is a duel with Tagovailoa, and people will talk about those matchups with, Brady and Manning, and Rodgers against, how did they do it? They didn't do against each other. It was their teams. And so Tagovailoa comes in as, maybe the most heralded quarterback that Nebraska is going to play this year, other than J.J. McCarthy. And McCarthy.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I hope you don't
disrespect. Look at that.
Personally,
stomping on the logo. What? Oh.
Personally, okay, at home. Let's qualify that. You cut me off. But there's a lot of attention that the reason why people think Maryland could win this game is because of Tagovailoa. Well, Haarberg can't go into this game thinking, I've got to be better than their quarterback, and I've got to do for my team what he may do for his team. You're right, Schmidt, he's got to go back to that kid that got his chance against Northern Illinois and, played with a little abandon, and that's kind of has to be the approach. I think everybody respects his approach is that he wants the job. He's got all the heart, and the Nebraska want to. And I think he just has to kind of get back to, maybe playing a little more in the backyard of his mind than in these quarterback duels on the big stage. And if he does that, then I think he probably serves himself well, as opposed to putting way too much pressure on himself.
I can't believe you did Athan Kaliakmanis like that without mentioning him among the best quarterbacks that Nebraska's faced this year with J.J.
I'm pretty confident in that one. Yeah, Shadur may have slipped my mind, sort of, but Kaliakmanis not. That was not a slip.
Yeah, I wonder what you guys thought. I was really interested in Haarberg's comments on Tuesday this week when he came to the press conference, the players' press conference after Marcus Satterfield spoke and talked about his own struggles that he's had with trying to do too much throughout his career as a quarterback, and how this goes back to high school, and he fights this inner battle with working, trying to think things through, and he gets in his own way. He's thinking too much and not just reacting. I thought that was a really unique moment, because I think there are players all over the field, and there have been quarterbacks at Nebraska through the years who I think have struggled with that. I mean, I think Taylor Martinez had some of that going on. Adrian, perhaps at times, and you can even look at Tommy Armstrong, other quarterbacks that just didn't let the game come to them at times. And I've never heard them bring it up. I feel like it's something as a quarterback that if you bring it up, you feel like it can almost make it worse, because then other people know some of the things that you're struggling with. And Haarberg didn't have any issues with it. And he said, I'm going to see Dr. Brett Haskell, the sports psychologist at Nebraska, to work on this stuff and work on this part of my game. He was going to see her that afternoon. So it's a really unique situation, and I applaud his openness, but I don't know that I've ever seen a player in the middle of the season who's gone on the record in front of everybody and said that. And I think there's a reason for it, and he's doing it because he feels like that can kind of help free him. That's part of the process that he needs to put into place in order to clear this thing and just be able to go play free again. But it was a different kind of case study, I think, for a quarterback to talk like that.
It was very genuine and telling by Haarberg to lay it out there. Pretty simple for me on Saturday when it comes to playing free, and the discussion about sliding, or do you run through it? And now we're back to, all right, run through a face mask, right?
Yeah.
But just manage the ball game and make a few plays. Is he comfortable? Is he comfortable with what's being called? Clearly not. And there's just some instances where how much of the field is he seeing with some of these routes? Because there are open players. And again, with him trying to do too much, he's taken the big shot too often when there might be a crosser that can get you some yak yards. And I hope there's more of a shift for him in the offense for Nebraska fans on Saturday, because it's chicken or egg here with play calling and execution. Well, manage this, make a play, do what you're great at, and make sure you put him in position to do what he can execute.
And it seems that he's seeing less and less of the field.
Yes.
As he's asked to do more in this offense and asked to kind of pull back and not be as reckless as he was with his body early in his time as the starter. So I think there's a method to Satterfield's madness when he says to just go run through somebody's face mask, because they want to get back to that guy who's just really not thinking and just doing. And if he can get to a place where he's running people over, albeit not against Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech, these guys in the Big Ten hit harder, and he goes and tries to do that against Wisconsin, he may end up in the injury tent. But that, he's a big guy, and I think there's a balance there, and they want him taking some shots and delivering some shots, because I think that will just allow him to, as we said, play more free.
Well, ironically, he got the job because of injury, right? Jeff Sims is the guy, gets hurt. Next man up, Heinrich, you're the guy. And then as he becomes the guy, then the other injuries start to mount up. So ironically, he gets the job, but then he's got to lead the rest of these folks who are, well, we got new receivers because everybody's gone down around you. And now the two running backs that have been behind you that we were relying on, they're gone. And a couple of offensive linemen. And all of a sudden he becomes almost a veteran amongst the starters on the offensive side. And I would imagine that for a little while, maybe you put a little pressure on yourself as, even though he doesn't play as though I've got to stay healthy the way he runs.
Yeah.
But maybe there's some caution there that all of a sudden the leader of the team is a guy who was the first one to get his job because of injury. And, I do. I think he's just
yeah.
going to go back and play with abandon.
Yeah, the additional irony there is that the other reason he got the job or kept the job is because he was doing a good job of taking care of the ball when Sims went down. And Sims committed 3 turnovers in each of the first 2 games, and then matters were taken out of his hands because he hurt his ankle. But Haarberg at the beginning was doing a good job of taking care of the ball, and now he's kind of morphed a little bit into this version that we saw of Sims early in the year with 3 turnovers against Michigan State and had turnover issues in the previous week in a win against Purdue. So he needs to get back to that guy, as we've been saying, who can run through people, who can play without thinking, and maybe that will allow him to cut some of these turnovers and see more of the field.
And one of the things I've noticed that is different from Haarberg from Louisiana Tech and Northern Illinois to now, and obviously it's a different level of competition, but I feel like what he's reading pre-snap is becoming more challenging for him, because it felt like whenever he was more decisive, he was finding that first read, he was hitting that first read, and you're keeping the offense in rhythm. And one of the things Matt Rule said at that time was there's a hell of a lot fewer quarterbacks in college football making multiple reads on a play than you think. He says like 1 read quarterbacks are kind of the standard. And I can't remember if that was in reference to Sims or in reference to Haarberg, but he said that back around the time that Northern Illinois was coming to town. And Haarberg is no different. He's very much got his 1 read, and you talk about not seeing the whole field. I think the coaching staff's trying to simplify things. The problem is whenever he's making that read, there's been a lot more times recently when that 1 read has been wrong, where the guy's been double or triple covered, and you saw it against Michigan State throwing it into the end zone. There's a safety hanging out right where he's trying to throw the ball, and he never even sees him. He's just staring his receiver down and makes the throw. And it's okay if Nebraska doesn't have a quarterback that can't go through a progression, make multiple reads within a play. That's okay. That's common in college football. But the problem to me becomes this issue of locking in on that 1 read instead of whenever things get rough, as they were against Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech, getting out of that pocket and making something happen whenever the play breaks down. It's very much more a case now of, well, I'm going to try to squeeze it into that window, or I'm going to trust what I saw in practice, and I'm going to trust my arm and squeeze it in there. It's that element of making something happen after that first read whenever the first read isn't there. That's what I think has changed from weeks 3 and 4 until now, is that aspect of pre-snap, he finds the guy, he's going to go to that guy, and it almost feels like, especially against Michigan State, he's going to go to that guy regardless of what happens throughout the play.
Get him rolling out. I mean, just Elijah and I were watching a lot of his high school film, and he was really accurate and playing with some confidence and was moving in the pocket either out of the shotgun or on the move. We'll see if that's more of a reality. Average Joe Sports Show continues on, and guys, let's spend a second here.
Let me make one more point about Haarberg, and I'm going to go back to the brilliant point I made earlier in the week on the other episode. He began the season as an H-back, right, as a tight end. Nebraska's coaching staff obviously values his athleticism, his competitiveness, and what he can do for that offense. Perhaps at that, they wanted him on the field as the backup quarterback playing H-back and tight end. They want him out there. They want him a part of the offense. They just did not think that it was going to be as Nebraska's starting quarterback, even this deep into the season. And I think that next year, and you're talking about his honesty and his openness, which I think was very refreshing, especially in a weekend when we saw what happened after the USC game, and the comments made in the post-game press conference after USC and cuddling up with dogs and whatnot. I think Nebraska, with Heinrich Haarberg next year, when he's perhaps back at the position that they envisioned for him, you may see a much more freer football player when he's not the starting quarterback. Even though that's his job he wants, he's got it. He's been admirable. But next year, I think he goes into his football future at the position they envisioned for him. There.
No, well said. Mitch, you had a chance to touch on Elliot Brown and caught up with him this week. Let's dive in there for a second.
Yeah, Matt Rule talked more about Elliot Brown on Thursday, and I had a story that came out Thursday morning. Elliot is a fourth-year walk-on wide receiver out of Elkhorn South who came to Nebraska and was known more for his TikTok and Instagram following than he was for his football accolades, though he was a good quarterback. at Elkhorn South. This is not the Jared Tomich style of football. I don't think Jared was big into TikTok, but it is what it is. And Elliot came into the locker room and he wondered how he was going to be received by his teammates, and it was pretty much as you'd expect. There were questions about who this guy was and what his deal was and why he was dancing with his shirt off on the internet. And then now a teammate of theirs, and he said he's going to put his head down and he was going to work and earn their respect. And he's been at Nebraska 4 years. And when Garrett McGuire and Marcus Satterfield came in, and McGuire's his position coach, 24 years old, and Elliot's just a couple years younger than that, they hit it off to the level where Elliot Brown became a trusted member of this team, not just as a player, but almost as a coach. And about halfway through the season, it was the Michigan game, Garrett McGuire decided that he wanted a better view of the field. So he took a seat in the press box in the coach's booth during the game. And Rule and Satterfield said to him in the week of practice, hey, who's going to take over what you do on the sidelines? Because you've got all these freshmen down here that we're moving into key positions as the older players are dropping like flies with injuries. And Garrett said, no problem. Elliot's going to do it. And they asked him to take his helmet and trade it in for a headset. And he did. And he turned out to be the exact answer that they were looking for. And he's been a calming influence on guys like Malachi Coleman and Jalen Lloyd and Jaden Doss and Alex Bullock, who's a young guy, relatively, at least inexperienced, down there on the field playing a ton of snaps. And he talks to these guys as the voice of Garrett McGuire and as the voice of Elliot Brown during the last few games. And then unfortunately, Elliot Brown at practice last week after the Purdue game, Wednesday night at Memorial Stadium, tears his ACL in a non-contact drill just after he's got his feet wet in this new role. They still took him to Michigan State. They gave him a travel roster spot and put him on the plane with a torn ACL, and he went out there in a big knee brace and put that headset on and continued to coach from the sidelines. And then on Sunday, he came into the football offices and he told McGuire and Matt Rule that he was thinking about delaying the surgery for his ACL in order to finish out this season as essentially a coach on the sideline. He's not playing, he's not practicing. And Rule said, no way. He said, I'm not letting you put yourself, I'm not letting you put the team ahead of yourself. You need to get that surgery because you're an athlete and you're a football player first. So he had the surgery on Thursday this week in Lincoln, and he's going to be rehabbing, but he will not be on the sideline Saturday for the Maryland game while he's home feeling better. He thinks he's going to be back at Wisconsin next week. More realistically, the home game against Iowa on Black Friday is when we'll see Elliot Brown again. But it's great, I think, for Nebraska fans to start to get to know this guy in his fourth year in the program, right as he gets injured. And it's just turned out to be something that was completely unexpected, I think. If you had any sense of who he was coming out of high school, this is the son of Lance Brown, as a little bit of a side note there. And anybody who was around the Huskers in the 90s and knew about Lance Brown, it's not really the kind of player that Lance was a smart guy for sure, and he played a lot, but he did a backflip on the field when Nebraska was up by like 60 points, and his ears still might be ringing from what Coach Osborne said to him after that happened. So interesting family, really good kid, Elliot Brown, in my interactions with him. And coaching is potentially part of his future now just because of what's gone on in the last month or so.
Well, does his story not kind of remind you of Garrett McGuire just a little bit? Of Garrett McGuire going off to Baylor, and you know what? He might not be the same athlete that other guys in that Baylor team were whenever you compare it, same situation with Malachi Coleman and Jalen Lloyd and all these young freshmen. But Garrett McGuire brought his value in other ways to that team, and you see how he turns it into a coaching career. I think that same parallels, though, with Elliot Brown. And with Elliot Brown, what's insane to me, welcome to this era of college football, a fourth-year sophomore. He's still got 2 years of eligibility left. COVID's kind of screwed everything up, but that's just so insane to me. This guy's ready to graduate UNL, yet he's still got 2 years of college football eligibility left. And it's great for a coach that's trying to build a program that you can turn to a guy that's 22 years old and say, hey, this is a guy that we're going to have around for 2 more years, and he's already taking on this responsibility of putting on the headset and being an extra coach on the sideline. Like, what a great thing to have as your coach coming in, rebuilding a football program.
Well, no, for the second time in the show, it's like Lance Harbor and Jonathan Moxon, all right? It's Wes Kanan. You got the kids coaching now, or maybe that's what they should do at Michigan. But so what he's going to do though is he's going to be at home rehabbing and sending TikTok videos to the players on the sidelines, and that's with emojis, and that's how he's going to coach this weekend.
I mean, if the players are on TikTok during the game, then there's bigger problems than Elliot Brown being injured.
Either that or they're up. So there you go. Mitch Sherman, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, the Average Joe Sports Show. Find us on YouTube, the AJ Sports Show. Give us a subscription there. Twitter, the AJ Sports Pod. Guys, some rapid fire with big weekend games. You got Michigan, Penn State, big noon. And I think Michigan's -4, so they're favored on the road. Huge game for James Franklin. His record against the ranked, not good. His record in big games, not real wonderful either after about that third season, Mitch.
I know Elijah, since 23 Michigan is up there with 0-1 Miami and 95 Nebraska, you're probably not calling this one, but I think they're going down. I wouldn't say that if it wasn't for all of the peripheral noise, but I think Michigan's going down. Penn State is better than what it showed on the road at Ohio State, especially on the offensive side. And I think Michigan is maybe like playing with 3/4 of a tank because of all of this stuff. And it kind of looked that way against Purdue last week at home. So I'm taking Penn State to win outright.
Okay. I'm going to stick with Michigan by the narrowest of margins. I think Penn State gets the cover, but I think Michigan by 3.
I got Michigan 24-14, a little lower scoring than what Michigan's used to this year, but I think their defense is just way too good, and I think that Penn State offense, it's solid. I don't think it's enough to get yards on Michigan, and I think Michigan gets a 24-14 win, a winning cover for the Wolverines.
This is the home field advantage. If this was in the big house, I'd take Michigan. It's at the whiteout in the Happy Valley, and I think this is the make or break game for James Franklin at Penn State. If they lose at home, it's really weird rumblings. It might be time for a divorce, but if they beat Michigan, I think that quiets things down for a little while, especially if it puts them in possible playoff contention. But I think he's coaching for his time there.
Mm.
He's a great coach, but I just think it's time to run its course.
Ole Miss, and of course they are rocking and rolling with Georgia. I think that's 9.5. And Lane Kiffin is not getting Christmas cards from some after the audio leaked out about his treatment of a player. I'm sure Lane's got a side to this, but Ole Miss has got a second crack at another top 10. Do they belong? And they've always kind of tended to be that 9-3 football team unless they can get by. Georgia's a big ask.
I don't think they.
I fell for this against Alabama. I fell for it against Alabama, and I was wrong. And I'm not going down that road a second time. So Georgia's just going to do what it needs to do to win. That's this Georgia team. This is not Georgia from last year that wins the national championship. By 40-some points or 50-some points.
Yeah, that's Michigan.
Good point. But until Saturday. But so I like Georgia to win, but not in a rout.
Yeah,
Ole Miss will cover.
I'm kind of with Mitch. I think that 9.5 number, if that is the number, feels about right to me. I think it's probably about a 10-point Georgia victory, somewhere in the 31-21 range.
I think this is a Lane Kiffin grab your popcorn moment when he's confident at kickoff and loses by 20.
That's pretty good.
Grab your popcorn.
Utah at Washington. Huskies have been not as dominant, although they ran the football well in La La Land and were super balanced. I think Utah covers. I don't have enough guts to say Utah wins outright, but Washington's been idling a little bit here, Mitch, with just their schedule. They've had a monster schedule of just consecutive tests.
Is this a night game?
Let me check.
This is a 2:30 kick in Washington. Or sorry, it's 12:30 in Washington, 2:30 in Lincoln.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if it was a night game, I was going to take Washington running away with it. I think they would get the juices flowing on Pac-12 after dark at Husky Stadium, but I still like Washington to win. I don't think it's going to be a runaway. Utah has a great defense as always. Well, I didn't look that way against Oregon, but has traditionally has a great defense. And I think this Utah defense will rebound. I like Washington to win. I think ultimately Washington is going to lose this year, and it's probably going to happen in the Pac-12 championship game in a rematch against the Ducks. But this is not the week. I like the Huskies to stay unbeaten.
I think Utah, as much as I like Utah and the way they play and everything, I think they got exposed against Oregon. And I thought they'd have a better showing, especially defensively. And I just don't think they're going to have it, especially if that game's in Seattle, which it is. Might be close, but I just don't think I don't think they win. Maybe it might be a 21-14 non-competitive game.
Feels like a game to me where Michael Penix can really put some distance between him and the rest of the pack in the Heisman race. I think Penix is going to be your Heisman winner this year. I think this is a game where he shows it, and I think Washington gets a big win against Utah.
Show me State, Missouri, Tennessee. Missouri's good. I mean, Missouri's a really good team. They made a couple of mistakes against Georgia on the road, 2 turnovers, but they were right there. Lost at the buzzer. Was that LSU? No, LSU beat them by 10, but that was a pretty back-and-forth game. I think Missouri, I'd take the points and the Tigers at home over Tennessee. I think Missouri bounces back.
Is Eli Drinkwitz just the guy that nobody wants to talk about as having one of the best seasons for a head coach out there in the country right now? I mean, you look at the guy and it looks like he's should be teaching a biology lab, and his team just gets better and better, not just every year, but week by week throughout the season. They had a huge loss last year against Kansas State, came back and avenged that on that incredible walk-off field goal by their big huge kicker. Who lunked that thing through there in the rain, I think, and what a moment that was, one of the moments of the season so far in college football. And last year, Tennessee hung 60-some points on the Tigers. I think they avenge it and win outright. Missouri, coming off the relatively close loss against Georgia, takes down Tennessee and Josh Heupel.
I think Tennessee's still playing off of last year for a lot of people. I think people were enamored with them a year ago, and they have not been able to replicate that kind of magic. And
Hendon Hooker's gone.
Yeah, that's right. You kind of lose that quarterback that was your magician. I think Missouri is actually going to win this game.
I say don't sleep on Milton, and I'm taking the Vols on the road to win outright. I think they are the betting favorite, so maybe that's not the boldest pick, but I will take the Vols in a close game.
Michigan transfer that quarterback.
Yeah.
So just,
he could have been part of the greatest college football team of all time, but he missed out.
I was thinking it.
Well, I don't know what USC is going to do about covering Oregon, but will Caleb cry this Saturday?
Wow.
Man, that's harsh, Chris. I mean, see the poor guy getting covered up by his mom in the stands. He's talking about watching TV and cuddling with his dog, and you just got
2 more he can have.
Yeah. He's not winning back-to-back Heismans, I'll tell you that.
That was the guy last week who realized his chances at a number 1 overall pick were slipping away. I think that's what the emotion was about.
It just was a strange scene. And the whole thing out there, Lincoln, I mean, this began a few weeks ago, the Orange County Register, and then the Grinch needing gone, and Lincoln Riley under fire, and then Grinch is fired, and then Caleb's crying, and Caleb wants ownership in the NFL, and she should shut it down for the rest of the season. All the storylines out of USC have just been bizarre.
They had the young reporter banned from practice by Lincoln Riley, and then they made amends in a late night phone call. It's been a weird year for sure.
So they're going to be out of the top 25.
I believe they're out at this point. I like the Ducks big in this one.
Yes. They can probably name their score. USC's got not much left in the tank after being a top 5 favorite.
I like that.
They're going to sweep the leg and not feel bad about
it. Well played.
I'm with you guys on that one. And Schmidt, do you have any more games for us? Because I have an upset pick of the week I'd like to get in here.
Well, the over/under on Iowa Rutgers is 28.5.
Under.
I like Rutgers for the outright win at Kinnick.
I'm going under.
I like blindly
Under.
betting the under on every single Iowa game left on the schedule. Does not matter who they're playing. Bet the under. You're going to win some money. That's what I'll say there.
It was 0-0 at halftime last year or last week at Wrigley. What wasn't it?
Yep.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's going to be 3-0 this week at halftime at Kinnick. And I don't know who's going to be winning, but 3-0 at halftime, and I like them to go under. I like 10-3 Iowa win.
Okay, 10-3 it is.
I don't freaking care.
Hey man, the Hawks are in charge.
Bill, you should care because Nebraska needs Iowa to lose one if they want to make it to Indianapolis.
Nebraska's going to Indy. I'm going to Indy. Look, this game's gonna be played in black and white.
All right, real quick, Nebraska and Maryland -2. Terps, I think too much Maryland. Hate to do it. Nailed the score last week. Going to beat my chest for 2 seconds. And
you did. Wow. That's a great job. Great job.
Mitch is like, you bastard. Give me Maryland 27. Give me Nebraska 10.
Are you flying out to College Park for that prediction to watch the game too, by the way?
No, I am not. No, I am not.
You going to rent a car for the second time in your life?
Wow. Someone's keeping score. Man.
It's got receipts, man.
Take it personal.
You work for like Enterprise or what's going on here?
Car that picks you up.
I like the Terps. I like the Terps in this one. And I've been wrong pretty much every week in the Big Ten on Nebraska, it seems. But I like Maryland. I think there's too much offense, and Maryland wins. I'll go 24-13.
Okay.
I objectively am taking Nebraska just because I think it's at home. I think it is an odd travel intangible for Maryland. This is a different environment. They're going to tell themselves it's just another game, but it's different. Then they're traveling from east to the Midwest. I think Nebraska has a bit of an advantage there. They got to take advantage of it early. If they don't, if it's close in the second, not going to happen. I think Heinrich Haarberg plays a little more loose, and I think the defense was embarrassed at Michigan State. And as great of an athlete as Tagovailoa is, and he's completing 65% of his passes, but the scouting report seems to always people think that this is a guy who runs the ball a lot. He's only got like 37 yards rushing on the season, and he's only rushed like 50 times. So that's like 5 rushes a game. It's not very much. So he may be able to maneuver in the pocket, but he's not a big running threat for the most part. He's got great receivers, 4 of them over 30 catches, about 1,700 yards. But I think this is an opportunity for Nebraska's defense. And I made Chris leave, but he's rethinking. I'm going to say Nebraska at home just because Nebraska's at home.
I think it's a game with plenty of field goals. Yeah. Schmidt's back. I think it's a game with plenty of field goals, especially for Maryland. I think they're going to move the ball well. I think Nebraska's defense is going to be solid in the red zone. Close game late. Screw it. Why not? Give me Nebraska 17, Maryland 16.
Good for
you. There you go.
I just want to finish with this. I've had this feeling since about mid-season that it was going to come down to Iowa for Nebraska and bowl eligibility, and that in some ways that leads me down the road to make the pick that I did. But I think it's all going to be hanging out there on the line on Black Friday, and Nebraska's going to get bowl eligible, and it's going to be a huge party and all over the turf at Memorial. They might tear the goalpost down.
Well, that seems like a really good way to end it, but I'm going to step in and end it in a completely worse way. Elijah's upset pick of the week. Take it to the bank, take it to the Warhorse, wherever you're going, go make yourself some money. The U outright over Florida State knocks them out of the college football playoff contention. Give it to me. Give me the U. They're winning outright this weekend. I have a gut feeling.
Something's got to happen with these teams at the top. Too many undefeated teams this late in the season, so I like it.
Give me the U.
Mitch Sherman, Bill Doleman, Elijah, and his lock of the year. And Chris Schmidt, the Average Joe Sports Show. YouTube, find us, the AJ Sports Show. Twitter, the AJ Sports Pod. We'll talk to you next week.